guys, if you're just clicking in and don't know what's going on or where we are, we're at the Wolf Conservation Center in New York. To find more information about them, they have a Twitch channel, they have live cams, so you can watch the wolves all day, just like you watch the Alveus animals all day. And we've also been fundraising today, and you guys have raised over $5,000. Thank you so much. The work that they're doing here, he's coming back. The work that they're doing here, so they do breeding and release of these wolves into the wild. They do education. This is one of their educational ambassadors, Silas, who we met a year ago when he was a little puppy. Now he's much bigger. And they advocate for protections for wolves in the wild as well. Cool tidbit I said earlier, last time I was here, we talked about red wolves because they have red wolves and gray wolves at this facility. And there were 8 red wolves in the wild last time I was here, and now there are 17. Is it just Silas in that enclosure, or are there other friends? It's Silas and one other, right?
Yep. So Silas lives with his brother. Well, we say it's his brother, but his older brother, Nakai. Nakai is 10 years old and a bit more shy than Silas is. So he is hiding with his, popsicle. He's just farther back in the enclosure. He, especially around new groups of people, usually doesn't prefer to be super visible. Silas is much more curious, much more comfortable compared to Nakai. So Silas usually steals the show.
How big are the enclosures? Regan said this one's about 2 acres.
Yeah, so our enclosures range from just under an acre to 2 acres. So this enclosure was the very first enclosure we built. Our center was built in the 90s, and we were incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit in 1999. And this was at that point, was kind of like our only enclosure, because the initial goal of the center was just to teach people about wolves, and help them realize wolves aren't scary, that wolves should be protected, and we shouldn't be afraid of them. And so we had our 3 ambassadors living here. Their names were Kyla, Lucas, and Apache. And then in 2002, Atka joined. And then Atka very soon after had an enclosure built for him because he wasn't getting along with the other wolves. And then soon after that, we were invited to join both the red wolf and the Mexican gray wolf. At that point, the SSPs, the species survival plans. And so we built some extra enclosures. And over the years, we've just kind of, as land becomes available, kind of kept building. We have maxed out our enclosure space on site. So we have 10 enclosures. And those enclosures, again, range from just under an acre to 2 acres in size. But we will kind of allocate wolves to enclosures based on their family size. So larger families will get larger enclosures. And we typically will put like a pair of wolves in some of our smaller enclosures. But Silas and Nakai will always be in this enclosure. So this won't change in terms of the wolves that live in it. And we do recognize that, we say an acre to 2 acres. It is large for captive standards. It is, of course, nowhere near close to the space a wild wolf pack would occupy. So we are not, kidding ourselves. We are aware that much more space would be much appreciated, but for Westchester County, it is a nice bit of land for them to have.
Some people have asked about if you do any releases in New York, or if not, why New York?
Yeah, so why New York is kind of a silly reason, and people tend to think we're joking, but we were founded by a classical pianist named Helene Grimaud, and she travels the world for her concerts. And when she started the center, she very much liked the fact that by living in Westchester County, you are close to 3 international airports.
Okay.
So
I mean, you're transporting wolves from airports.
Well, for her concert travels.
Herself, right.
Yeah. So for her, and obviously, and she's wonderful. She's still very much involved. She's on our board, but when she was starting the organization, I don't think she had any idea of what it would become.
Right.
So we are very far from where we release wolves. We are one of the furthest facilities that's actively releasing wolves. We have a great support system. We do have a lot of volunteer pilots through 2 different organizations, one called Lighthawk, another called Pilots to the Rescue. Oh, yeah. And they will fly Pilots to the Rescue flies like dogs, but they are pilots that donate their time, their plane, they'll pay for fuel, and they'll fly animals for rescue missions. And so Lighthawk has been very supportive with the Mexican wolf program, Pilots to the Rescue. We've used more for reds along the East Coast. But New York does not have, and actually the entire Northeast, we don't have any known recognized populations of wolves in the Northeast. And by that, I mean, you know, who knows if there's one or two moving around in, you know, and there's Nakai coming out, moving in Vermont, New Hampshire. These areas are very vast, and they do have really good wolf habitat, but no known populations and no slated reintroductions in the Northeast. The way wolves would come back to the Northeast is moving down from Canada or coming over the Great Lakes. So what's more important is that we have protections in place so that when more wolves do start coming, that they are protected, and that will allow them to establish a bit of a stronghold. We have had wolves come down into New York. The most recent was a wolf killed in 2021, mistaken for a coyote and killed. So wolves do come down, but and they are protected in New York, both at the federal and state level, and then in other states in the Northeast protected at the federal level. So they do have protections, but it's also really important to help folks better appreciate the carnivores we're already coexisting with, because if a larger carnivore comes on their heels and they can't even coexist with a smaller carnivore, it's not going to bode well. So, you know, coyotes, for example, they're wonderful to have around. But I think if there's any animal that's more hated than wolves, it would be coyotes.
Right.
And so we like to remind people that while we might not have wolves here yet, we do have their closest wild relative. And we can certainly do a lot more to make those animals appreciated or feel appreciated and respected.
Some people were asking when they were looking at Nakai about his coat and why it's different.
So coat color for wolves is a lot like hair color for humans. So different wolves can have different coat colors, even if they're the same species. So Nakai, when he lived with his older siblings, Alewa looked just like Nakai, same coat color. Their brother Zephyr had a completely black coat. And so it's just how genetics play out. Zephyr looked like their mom. Nakai and Alewa looked more like their dad. But gray wolves in the wild typically look a bit more like Silas with that mix of coat colors. The most important thing, though, about their coat is just that it serves as a protective layer. So it's going to act like a rain jacket. Red wolves would have more of like a brownish maroon coloring. Mexican gray wolves, more of a mix of blacks and grays, maybe some browns thrown in there. Arctic gray wolves would have that bright white coat, but when they're born, a vulture flying in. When Arctic gray wolves are born, they actually have a brown coat because when they're born in the Arctic, it's spring and it's muddy. So their coat will get lighter and whiter as they get older. So wolves can look very different. The term gray wolf doesn't refer to, you know, they don't have to be gray. They can be a mix of colors.
And what's that bird? That's a black vulture. Somebody asked where their food comes from. So we talked about this earlier. These ambassadors get some donations from Whole Foods and a local grocery store, but they also are lucky to have roadkill donations here as well. So they're wolves that are release candidates in the back that we saw earlier. They're getting roadkill. And these ambassadors are getting a variety of other meats. Meek Attack, thank you for the $25 donation. And Sliana, thank you for the $15 donation. This is Silas. Silas is an educational ambassador here and is eating a liver ice cube. Big ice cube. And he did steal it.
Yeah.
That was Nakai's ice cube. Do they go after the vultures? Vultures are big. Have you seen them go after vultures?
Yeah, it depends on how motivated they are. Usually it's more so if the vultures... here we go. Well, usually it's more so if the vultures are taking their food. It really depends. Like Nakai just chose to chase the vulture away. But if the wolves are really, like with the Mexican gray wolves or red wolves, they'll gorge themselves when they eat. And then they're so full and tired that sometimes they just don't have the energy to scare away a vulture. But Nakai is doing a little bit of a scent he was rolling his neck in something up there.
She said they have caught squirrels and chipmunks and stuff in here, though.
Yeah, they do catch and kill live prey that make their way in.
Rebecca asked, is there a way people in the Northeast can report roadkill so they can find organizations like this first so it doesn't get thrown away?
Great question. I mean, if you're local to the Wolf Center, you're encouraged to call us. If you call our main line, we do have like a redirect if you're calling to report roadkill. We can only take deer from New York. We're not allowed to take roadkill from like Connecticut or across state lines. I don't know of a way for other like organizations to benefit if you're calling from like another state. I guess I would recommend just calling your local police department, and they might know.
Maybe, yeah.
But it's a great question. I unfortunately don't have a more thorough answer.
Charlie said, are those cave/dens real rocks? How?
They are not. They were made by people. And they're pretty sturdy, which is why we made them like that. There's cameras inside, and they're a good shelter for the wolves to use if we have severe weather. They're usually a bit cooler on hot days. But the den that's behind Silas will actually be revamped slightly. We're going to be doing some construction on that pond and den area. So the wolves are going to get a new pond structure, and the den's going to be tweaked a bit. So always thinking of ways to improve, but no, not real rock.
Mad Evie, thank you for the $100 donation. We said this a while ago. What do you think are the best ways that viewers can help wolves beyond what they're doing right now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to help wolves. And, you know, for everyone who's able to give financially, thank you. That's amazing. But if you're not able to give financially, there's still many ways you can help. And one way to do that is just when you're talking to your friends and family, tell them about the stream you watched today. Tell them about wolves. A lot of people don't think about wolves in their daily life, which is funny for us, considering it's our entire job. But, so some people don't know about wolves, and so they just assume what they've read, growing up. They think wolves are going to eat them, or they don't know that there's Mexican gray wolves. They don't know what a red wolf is. So you can certainly take that knowledge and share it with others. That's a great way to start changing the way people perceive wolves. But if you're comfortable, if you're already doing education, you can also reach out to elected officials. We had mentioned earlier that there's a pair of Mexican gray wolves that are north of their, quote, recovery area. And they're in a place where they historically should be. It's a great habitat. And so, we're encouraging people to, Silas is going to be pooping. We're encouraging people to contact Arizona Game and Fish Department and encourage them to let those wolves stay north of Flagstaff. You can also contact, what's today? Tomorrow, Montana's Game and Fish Commission is going to be meeting to talk about some of their wolf trapping policies. So you can, attend these virtual meetings. Idaho and Wyoming also do those meetings. Wyoming had a really brutal case in April where a man ran a wolf over with a snowmobile. And then
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and then brought her to a bar, taped her mouth shut, and let people take pictures with her before killing her. And in the state of Wyoming, the only thing that was illegal about that was that he brought a live wolf to a private residence. Not that, so you can run wolves over with snowmobiles in Wyoming. You can do it in Idaho too. And you can bait wolves. Wolves in Wyoming and 85% of the state, they're classified as predators, which means they can be shot on sight any day of the year. And so with that specific Wyoming case, we've been aware of Wyoming's atrocious practices, but for many people, it was the very first time they realized that wolves in Wyoming and coyotes and other animals, they're actively run over with snowmobiles. It's called wolf whacking or coyote whacking, and people film videos and put it on YouTube. And so there's a complete disregard for the value of an animal's life. But But so one thing we're pushing for, actually there's a few things. So one thing Wyoming could do is they could change the classification of wolves from a predator to, they could really do it whatever, but they would most likely change it from like a predator species to a game species. Game species you can't run over. We understand changing a wolf from predator to game still doesn't help wolves in a sense that they can still be killed, but it would at least stop them from being run over with snowmobiles. We also joined forces with a lot of different NGOs to ask the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management to ban the use of snowmobiles to kill wildlife on lands they manage. There's also hopefully going to be a bill introduced in Congress over the next few weeks, a bipartisan bill that would ban the killing of wildlife on federal lands with snowmobiles. But Wyoming has specifically devoted some of their state legislators to discuss the wolves and predator killing at the state level. And so you're encouraged to contact that group, their working group, and ask them to stop listing wolves as predators. So action to be taken there. With red wolves and Mexican gray wolves in general, and with wolves in general, it's always really important to let those state agencies, federal agencies know that you support those wolves, that you support your, taxpayer dollars being used to fund those recovery efforts. Because sometimes, they'll try to say, oh, there's not public support for XYZ. But if you're using your voice, it does cut away at that argument. So a lot of things you can do. We also on our website have a take action page. And you can see the various campaigns we're pushing. Right now, for example, Congress is in recess, but they passed the House passed a version of the fiscal year 2025 appropriations funding bill. And that bill does have a rider that would remove federal protections for gray wolves across the lower 48 states. And so you're encouraged to contact your senators and ask them to pass a clean version of the funding bill without that anti-wolf rider included. We're also, encouraging the Fish and Wildlife Service to release a captive Mexican gray wolf, who's a wild-born Mexican gray wolf who they have in captivity. So long story short, there's a lot of ways you can use your voices for wolves. And contacting officials who kind of carry out some of these wolf policies is a great way to make your voice heard and hopefully see a change in those practices as well. And if anyone has questions specifically about that, you can certainly email us or reach out to us through our website if you want, more information or a more detailed approach.
What do you think? You guys have any final questions here? Thank you so much for all of your donations today. Insane. I hope you guys learned a lot. If you missed the vet check at the very, very beginning of the stream, you can find it in the VOD. I'm also vlogging today, so there will be a behind-the-scenes vlog on my YouTube channel within the next couple weeks. Petal has asked this question a couple times. Are all wolves in North America endangered, and how many species have gone extinct?
So not all wolves in North America are listed as endangered. Canada does not, most wolves in Canada don't have protections. There are eastern wolves in Canada that do have protections to an extent. In the U.S., gray wolves are listed as a federally endangered species in most of the lower 48 states. Wolves in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the eastern third of Washington, the eastern third of Oregon, and a portion of Utah are not listed as an endangered species. They don't have any protections, and they do have hunting seasons in Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. Wolves in Alaska don't have protections. Wolves in Alaska, I think, really get the short end of the stick because there are brutal practices happening there as well. Wolves are, shot in their dens with their pups, and it's tough for them as well. Red wolves and Mexican gray wolves are both federally endangered. They're listed separately from gray wolves. So even if, for example, with that funding bill, if gray wolves lose federal protections, that will not impact Mexican gray wolves. That will not impact red wolves. It will still be devastating for gray wolves. We've seen gray wolves lose protections in recent years, and we've seen states immediately push through hunting seasons. Wisconsin pushed through a hunting season where over 200 wolves were killed in under 3 days. So we know what happens when wolves lose federal protections, and it's nothing that's based in science. There's no scientific reason to kill wolves, no ethical reason either. In terms of subspecies that have gone extinct, yes, subspecies have gone extinct. I couldn't give you a number because there would be a lot. Even with red wolves the red wolf we have today, there were different subspecies, even as recent as the early 1900s, but they're extinct now. So there is not even a accurate record of the wolves or other wildlife necessarily that have gone extinct or different subspecies.
Guys, if you want more info on wolves or more about what we learned about today, or you want to read more about it, you can do Command WCC to find Wolf Conservation Center's websites. If you guys want to keep up with Silas and Nakai, the wolves that we've been watching, here you can watch them all day long on their live cams right there, actually. So it's Wolf Conservation Center on Twitch. If you guys want to go check them out over there. And that is all I have for you guys today. Again, if you didn't see the vet check and you want to, it's in the VOD, so check that out. And then look out for a vlog that's going to come out soon. Going elsewhere, thank you for the $100 donation. Regan, do you have anything else that you want to
No, I just want to thank everyone so much. You guys have really been one of our biggest and most consistent group of supporters over these last few years. So thank you all so much for continuing to show up, not just for Maya, but for the wolves here as well. It's been nice seeing kind of the growth of the center, the wolves, but even wild wolves throughout your time being involved. So that's always exciting and inspiring. But thank you for spending the morning with us and the wolves, and hopefully we'll see some more kind of engagement in some of those actions we mentioned. But thank you all so much. And hopefully we'll continue to hear from you as well.
Of course. Yeah, we finished it. So close. $5,969. RPM, thank you for the $150 donation to get us to our 6K donation goal. Thank you very, very much. Shrimp, thank you for the $25 donation. Guys, I hope you learned something today. Go check out their website. Go check out their live cams. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, everyone.